In this episode, we dive into shadow work, what it is, where it comes from, and how we can start using it to release the thoughts, beliefs, and behaviours that hold us back.
We chat to therapist Rod Boothroyd, who takes us through shadow work's archetypes and explains how you can also use the practice in everyday life to fully step into your potential and power. Rod's even included a short exercise you can use right away to shift your energy to a more positive place. We know you're going to love this one. Hi, I'm James Davis.
And I'm Claire Davis.
We're the Midlife Mentors, here to lift the lid on how to achieve health and happiness.
The balanced, no-nonsense way.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Midlife Mentors with me, James.
And me, Claire. How are you all? We've had a good time, haven't we? We actually didn't do our podcast last week. Naughty us. But I think you'll forgive us because, as you know, we move around a lot and we've just got back to London, which is amazing. The weather's not so nice as Ibiza, but we're loving
Missing the beach, not going to lie.
Yeah, no, missing our Sunday morning swims. I have to say that is one thing I'm really missing. But it is nice to be back in a nice gym, actually.
Yeah.
Our natural habitat.
I actually wrote a post on that, how your environment can raise your output, your energy.
Absolutely. Well, I don't think we ever told you this, but we were actually training in a pink gym in Ibiza.
I think we kept that one quiet.
Yeah.
It's called the Donna Gym, and Donna is obviously Spanish for ladies, so it was designed at some point as a ladies only gym, but there weren't enough ladies using it, so men were allowed, but all the machines were pink and from the 80s.
Bright pink. It didn't work very well, so it's nice to be back in an inspiring environment gym, isn't it? So yeah, but glad to be back. So sorry that we didn't do one last week, but we have a very, very special episode for you today. And it's well worth your wait. So you've waited 2 weeks for this and we're coming at you with an awesome episode.
We are. So in our constant search for growth, we often try different approaches, different things. And something that's really been really powerful for me has been shadow work. So we thought we would get on the therapist that I've been working with, the amazing Rod Boothroyd, and have him talk a little bit about shadow work, what it is, explain archetypes, and kind of dive into, if people are interested, how they can maybe start to get involved in this. So I introduce Rod, who is a therapist specialising in archetypes and interest in the shadow. Rod, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Perfect timing. Interest in this area is burgeoning. You've got the enthusiasm to carry it forward. And here I am to tell you a little bit about it. So what could be better?
I know, exactly. Great. It's so great to have you here. Obviously, it's quite odd. Like, we had this relationship, wasn't I? I've been a few months now having regular meetings and talking back and forth.
And now I'm here, which is probably a bit odd. There's like a third wheeler.
They're not a third wheeler. But maybe let's, for people listening, just open it up to maybe you could explain the concept of shadow work, like where it came from and what it is.
Yeah, sure. Well, I think something that's probably easy for everyone to understand is that any kind of therapy is about digging into the past and finding the limitations and trying to find a way forward. Statement of the obvious, really. You can call it coaching, you can call it therapy, you can call it whatever you like, but it's about removing blocks. So shadow work is just really a refinement of that idea. And its great gift to everyone who tries it is that it's a very quick way of getting into the unconscious and finding what's going on in there. It's almost like you open a door and you peer straight into the unconscious, into that area that shadow workers call shadow because it's the unconscious and therefore in some sense not visible in the light of day. So it's a shortcut to what's important, shortcut to change, hopefully, if all goes well. And I think the results speak for themselves.
Why do you think it's important that we know our shadow? I mean, maybe, obviously, you've explained it a little bit there, but, the way it's been explained to me, and I'd love you to put your own spin on this, but the way it's been explained to me, it's the parts of ourselves that obviously unconsciously we have hidden away, hence the fact that they're shadows. So if you wanted to expand on that a little bit more, that would be great. But also, like, why would you say it's good for us to recognize and work with those shadows?
It's a great question, Claire. Thanks ever so much. Well, first of all, let's talk about what the shadow is. The stuff that gets put into the unconscious. It's basically every aspect of, imagine a child born into a family. Not everything that child brings into that family is going to be welcome. So they will have to put certain things away. That could be their anger, their tears, their happiness, their joy, their exuberance. You know, it all depends on the particular family, but you can guarantee that a child in its entirety is not always welcome in the form it appears. So they have to shovel away some of their personality into the unconscious to suppress it, to put it out of sight. And those are the things that really constitute the shadow. It's a process that goes on really until late teens, actually, because the pressures on, you know, even late teenagers is social. You know, that's not acceptable. This is. Conform to this way of being. Don't do that. Early adulthood, that process tends to stop. So by the time you're in your early 20s, there's an awful lot of material that's being shoveled out of sight. But the interesting thing about it is you can put it out of sight, but it doesn't go away. There's a guy called Robert Bly, who was one of the first people to really explore shadow, I think is the best way of putting it. And he came up with this wonderful expression, which goes, when you put something into shadow, it de-evolves into barbarism. So think, for instance, of a boy who puts his anger into shadow, in other words, suppresses it. Over time, that builds up into something that can look very much like rage. You know, little trigger, completely insignificant, and there's a massive explosion, and everybody's left thinking, what the heck happened there? Road rage. I mean, even hearing about trolley rage, can you believe, in supermarkets? It's like, what's that about? It's not about what happens in the moment. It's about what's happened in the past and all that.
Not about a trolley.
Yeah, exactly. It's about that incredible store of anger that's just been fermenting. And of course, you see it in other ways too, you know. For example, if little girls often are allowed to cry and boys are not. So boys might put away their grief and girls might, you know, put away your anger. Nice girls don't behave like that, kind of this stereotype thing. So girls might put away their anger, boys might put away their tears. And then, of course, that has consequences too in later life. But the main thing as far as coaching is concerned, I think, is a little bit more subtle than that. It's when people put away things like their magnificence, their intelligence, their creativity, their self-determination, their self-confidence. Those positive qualities put into shadow can be just as powerful an influence, or rather an absence can have just as much of an influence on somebody's life as the more obvious ones. So anybody who's not confident, or anybody who's behaving in a certain way, you know, kind of, I'm thinking here, dependency on substance is a very common one. It's probably because of what happened to them years ago and what they decided wasn't acceptable in the world. So the thing comes down to this, that if you're trying to improve the quality of your life, and you two and myself are all deeply involved in this, you know, we're all trying to improve the quality of people's life. The question is what's in shadow, is what's been put away a long time ago going to stop people moving into a positive frame of mind, kind of self-determination, self-actualization? And the answer very frequently is yes. So I have to say, I haven't met many people for whom self-discipline, let's call it that, is a good way to engage in personal development. For many people, self-discipline lasts as long as a New Year's resolution. Yeah. And why is that? Because somewhere in the back of their mind is a belief system that goes, you can't do this, you're not good enough, don't even try, or whatever. Whereas with shadow work, we can get that door open, have a look at what's in there, pull it out, and hopefully change those beliefs so that somebody becomes more able to control their destiny. Let's put it that way. Does that make sense?
I love that.
It does. I love that. I mean, I love it does. You said right at the start of that, you were talking about how shadow work is can be quite a rapid process, because using metaphors. I would say that's part of the work I really loved, very metaphor driven. And we'll talk about the archetypes in a minute, I think. But something you touched on then, there's like this dual side to it, right? There's the negative blocks that can hold us back that we need to go and deal with. There's also those positive aspects that we keep in shadow as well.
Yeah.
And what I've particularly enjoyed is stepping into those archetypes and visualizing that and using that positive energy to move forward. And I think that's such a powerful part of it as well. And for me, from a personal experience, it is a way to get rapid results, I think. So that's why I think it's so great that you're on here talking about it.
Yeah, and it's also why I'm so pleased that we're here talking to you as well, because I've seen a huge improvement in chat. And that sounds bad in a way, like a huge improvement, like he was somehow flawed to begin with. But I've actually we're all flawed.
Well, we are, it's true.
Yeah, but I've seen a huge openness and opening of you, and stepping into the version of you that sometimes the partner or whoever it is can see, but we're not necessarily manifesting it ourselves,
absolutely.
Because it doesn't matter whether someone says, I believe in you, I see this amazing version of you. It doesn't matter, because if we don't believe it ourselves.
Great point, Claire. It all comes down to self-belief.
Mm.
That's the truth of it. It doesn't matter what somebody's got put away in the cellar until they're prepared to open the door, bring it up the steps and into the light, and then embody it fully. It ain't going to show itself. And when you think about the way kids in this country are brought up, I'm not universally, but there's a lot of this kind of, dare I say it, dumbing down.
Yes.
If you stand out, what do you get? You get criticism from the other kids around you, etc. This kind of thing. It's no wonder kids decide at some level to put away their gifts. So, for me, one of the great aspects, as James just referred to, of the shadow work is not just looking at the past, and you can do reparative work on that, but actually also looking at the possibility and potential. If this were you, brought up from birth with all of these innate gifts, fully developed, fully appreciated, fully wanted and supported, what would you look like? Well, here's the amazing thing. You can actually step into a part of yourself and embody those qualities and get access to them. So this potentially can change everything.
Absolutely.
Pushed away, they don't hide, they don't disappear, as I say, they sit there waiting, waiting for the moment.
It's something we talk about a lot with our clients, actually, that we're saying you cannot outperform your self-identity. So, that's the old thing Henry Ford said, if you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right.
Exactly.
So we encourage people to do a lot of work on their beliefs and actually thinking about what their new self-identity should be that's aligned with the goals that they want.
Yeah.
What I like about shadow work is I know for some people, like a bit of a stumbling block, if you've come from a place of not much success in an area and you're trying to get there, it can be hard to imagine yourself sometimes achieving it. But with shadow work, using the archetypes, you can kind of step into a role almost. It's a metaphor, and then it becomes much more powerful, I've found from my personal experience. So perhaps you maybe would like to talk about the main archetypes and how they're utilized and what they represent about the parts of our unconscious. Yeah,
with pleasure. I'd be very happy to do that. So this model, there are different models, I've seen books of your 127 archetypes. Well, we wanted to reduce it down to 4, just to keep things simple. And because it works, the proof of the pudding is it works. So different people have different names for them, and sometimes the names don't really resonate with everyone. So for instance, let's start with the warrior. Now, this is a very male thing because Carl Jung was a male and the people who followed him were male, and they liked this concept of the warrior, which, quite understandably has a bad rap. What's going on in the Ukraine at the moment would turn anybody off the word warrior. But that's misunderstanding. It's actually about taking action in the world. It's about getting out of bed in the morning, getting up, going out there, getting things done. So that's a part of you that we regard as a kind of archetype in its own right. You might say, well, okay, what does that mean in terms of up here? Say, well, I don't know, really. It's a collection of energy and a collection of brain patterns and memories and intentions. But it definitely represents a definite part of the personality, the part of you that takes action to get things done. So, at its simplest, it's just getting out of bed in the morning, and then you can be assertive when you're out in the world. And then you can quite reasonably display anger if, say, somebody's invading your boundaries. And then we go beyond anger into aggression, which might be necessary if you're defending yourself, as the people in Ukraine are at the moment. And then, of course, we move into the distorted form, the one that's the product of being shut away for ages, which is rage, the road rage, the trolley rage, and all the rest of it, which sound comical, but of course, you know, they have serious consequences. So warrior, getting things done. And another name for that, that my colleague Marianne Hill has come up with, is action taker. And I kind of like that because it's like, yes. Now, the thing about action takers, excuse me, is they need orders, like people who have, you know, like I don't like the military metaphor, but it's appropriate. Soldiers need orders from the general.
I wanted to jump in here, Rod.
Go on.
Sorry to cut you off, but I know because like we did a lot of work on so basically we found, I think, that I've been operating for a long time mainly from my warrior energy, which is isn't being out there in the world and being aggressive. It's just like the doing. And Claire and I had talked about it. It's like this feeling we're always stuck in this striving place. So I describe it. I'm striving, and you start to feel exhausted with it.
Yeah.
And exactly what you're going to touch on next. Yes, your warrior is there carrying out the actions, but really without any structure or orders because they're missing.
Absolutely, totally. Yes, a great point. All of these archetypes, left to their own devices, can cause chaos. You know?
I'm laughing because mine have been, might go into this in a minute, but some of mine have been wreaking havoc in the last few days. But yes, it's what you just said.
I mean, it does sound comical, but actually, you know, there are serious consequences. I don't know if you ever came across the type A, type B behaviours. Yes, where type A is the one that results in a heart attack because you're just doing, striving, adrenaline's high, etc. Well, that's the out of control warrior, actually. You know, so the consequences can be serious.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's the problem with being entrepreneurs, isn't it?
But we've done a lot of work on shifting more towards, I don't know if you're going to come next to the sovereign energy, which is, I think, like some of the best work that I've done, getting into that place of the sovereign energy, which I'd really been missing before. And I think probably in today's society, a lot of people are missing that energy because there's a cultural element to this as well, right? In terms of an environment that we're raised in and around. And if certain things are suppressed by society as a whole, that can also have an effect.
Yeah, I think it's the greatest tragedy of our society that so many people have abdicated their own responsibility, their own leadership, their own self-determination, and handed it over to politicians who, by the best assessment, are untrustworthy or incompetent. I mean, that's a sweeping statement. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me, but my view is you only have to look around the world and see the no-hopers who are in charge in political office to understand how wrong this has gone. You know, we could talk for ages, I'm sure, about the reasons for that, but let's just focus on the solution, which is, of course, people take responsibility for their own lives and what's going on in their lives and the future of their lives and what they want and how they get it. So we could call this archetypal part, the king or the queen or the sovereign or the mature adult, actually, if you want to distill it to its simplest. Heart-centered leader is a good one. You might have come across that phrase, Claire. I think you're
with Marianne.
That's right.
Yeah.
So heart-centered leader is beautiful because what it means is that although you're the leader, you respect other people. You don't treat them in a way that is exploitative or disrespectful. It's kind of derived from Carl Rogers and his unconditional positive regard. So although you're there as leader, somehow you're also at the same time there. It's kind of quite a complex idea to get your head around, but if we think of unconditional positive regard, in other words, you like the fact that somebody is a human being doesn't mean you have to like what they're doing. That's a part of that. And up here's the leader in you, working from a heart-centered place, and that's about decision making. It's about goal setting. It's about self-confidence. Just glancing down at my notes so I can make sure I don't forget anything here. And in particular, mission and purpose. So you can call that what you want. I know mission is a very sort of masculine term. What's my mission in the world? But actually, there's something deeper about that. It's like, what's the purpose of your existence on this planet? Because it sure ain't to sit on your ass watching Netflix and eating burgers and abdicating responsibility to politicians who make decisions that don't do any of us any good. How about just forming some plan for your own life? Be a leader, step into that energy.
Do you know, on that point, it's really funny because obviously I worked with Marianne on shadow work as well. And for me, it's interesting that you say some words and some phrases and terminology works for different people. Heart-centered leader absolutely does resonate with me. But actually, sometimes when I'm doing work with that sovereign part of myself, it's like the soul part of myself. It's
very much so.
It's the soul.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like when I'm coming from that soul place, that for me, I touch into my mission, my purpose, my legacy, my reason for being.
Absolutely.
And that eternal part of me.
It's beautiful. Because you're moving slightly towards this sort of semi-mystical aspects of it. Some people might not be open to, but I'll say this anyway. When you talk about soul, I think of the connection to something higher than us and something below us. Like kings and queens and leaders don't stand alone. If they're truly in flow, they're supported by above and they're supported by below, and they stand between earth and sky, heaven and earth, however you want to phrase it. So there's something about it which is bigger than they are that helps them to be in that place fully. And, I don't want to put anybody off the concept, because if you're not at that stage of your personal development, just making a few decisions can be a very powerful sovereign act.
Well, I think for people that are struggling to move forward, I think who struggle to find belief in themselves, that kind of the exercise of just kind of like, imagining what my sovereign might look like, what would the exercise that we do, having that metaphor of a sovereign and then naming the qualities of them, and then kind of stepping into that almost can start to give you those feelings that maybe you would struggle with on your own.
Well, why don't we, when we've talked about this, actually do that? I'll give a talk through of that for people. They can actually try it for themselves and see what happens.
That would be amazing.
That would be amazing.
Perfect. So I've worked with quite a lot of women over the years, and they tend to prefer terms like priestess, sorcerer to magician, which is the next one of the archetypes. And that's just a personal choice. I mean, you can call these things what you want, but it's about what they do that's important. So here's the creative force, the thinking ability, rational thinking, creative thinking, and solving problems. That's the one that I'd forgotten there, solving problems. So the part of you that's actually kind of the intellectual part, and, to kind of neck upwards, not neck downwards. It's all about the mind and what the mind can do. So it can work for you or against you, like all these archetypes. If it's out of control, it's obsessive thinking, it's anxiety, it's like endless rumination. And, I've suffered a bit from that myself over the years. It's like when there's no king or queen in place to control it. It's like Gandalf's trying to take over the kingdom and run it, but it's not his job. There's a king for that. Gandalf's job is to stand by the king and say, or the queen, and say, here's the answer to your problem, or here's several answers. You choose between them. This is one possibility. We could do it this way, we could do it that way. It's your choice as king around here. King, I wouldn't advise you to do that. Queen, I think that's probably not such a good idea. Here's another idea. See what I mean? It's like the advisor in the system, the rational, very aware of consequences, very aware of possibilities, but not on an emotional level particularly.
That's really important to say, I think.
Yeah.
Actually, that's really struck something with me, not on an emotion, like a really emotional level. I presume when that magician or priestess goes, like you've already alluded to, goes off on a rampage, that it's the anxiety, it's the overthinking, over obsessing.
That's right.
So there's like two sides to this archetype almost. There's that kind of like amazing kind of creative forward force, but then the other side is almost, we've talked about the safety officer kind of like throwing at you.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's really important. If you imagine a child in an environment that's not very good, they're going to find strategies to stay safe. And amongst other strategies, one way is that children can blame themselves for what's going on around them. In fact, they almost always do. I think about 95% of the time. children will think it's their fault. So the role of the safety officer, the budding magician, if you like, is to find strategies to stay safe. So people grow up with this identity of, I'm the one in the family who makes everything all right. I'm the one who negotiates the peace. I'm the one who sorts out problems. I'm the one who solves the problems because I'm the only one who can think around here, and so on and so on. And once formed, those patterns are pretty hard to shift. You need to have a very interesting dialogue with the safety officer much later in adult life as a therapist or counselor or coach, and find out exactly what it was that caused that person way back when to start that particular behavior pattern. Because safety officers take the view that if that's the way to stay safe, I'm going to keep on doing it forever and ever and ever, which is another massive source of people's limitations. For example, sorry to interrupt you, but just one thing, like public speaking. So many people are terrified of public speaking. And what I think that comes down to is somewhere in childhood, their safety officer went, it's not safe to be seen. It's not safe to stand out from the crowd. It's not safe to be heard. You'll be shot down.
I think that's a massive one for so many people. Because as children from a certain generation, we're told, children should be seen and not heard. Don't be a center of attention. Don't do this. And yes, that keeps your caregivers happy in inverted commas and keeps you safe in inverted commas. But then later on in life, it means you're still running that pattern. I think that's one of the big things that we've got, or I've got from our work, is that these things that may be appropriate for you as a child to keep you in a safe place just aren't appropriate as for an adult anymore.
Absolutely.
So it's not appropriate for an adult that's embracing their sovereign or their kingship.
And I also think it's really interesting what you just said, because I can really, really resonate with that. I was a child that was always on stage, absolutely loved it, loved being centre of attention, just thrived in it. Being on stage was my natural habitat. And then when I got bullied at the all-girls school, I came off stage, I hid myself away, I stopped doing all of those things that I loved. And now we do what we do with the podcast, with public speaking, everything like that. There's still those dual, I love it. And obviously we know anxiety and excitement are kind of the same coin, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So we know those feelings are really similar. I don't know whether I necessarily know whether I've still got anxiety or excitement.
Sure.
But I love doing them. I love public speaking, but there's still that part of me that is like, Claire, they're going to judge you. Don't put yourself out there because it's a real risk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so you saying that, it's really interesting that I still do it. I still make myself go on stage, and I'd love to do more of it, because there's still that gorgeous part of myself that's like, that's your natural habitat, Claire. That's your natural habitat.
Yeah, isn't it fascinating when you think about it? So much of the blocks that people face in adulthood are due to what happened in their childhood. Yeah. And they don't know it because, of course, this is all unconscious until you step them into this metaphor of the part of them that's the safety officer, risk manager, whatever you want to call it, and then get that part talking. And that's the beauty of shadow work. I alluded earlier to the speed of it. That's the speed of it, that you physically separate out the part and represent it, then put someone in it, and bingo, more often than not, they're talking from that part. It's like a miracle, but
so powerful,
very powerful. Yeah. And as I say, if somebody's got a real block, talking to the safety officer stroke risk manager, that can be a quicker way to remove it than, dare I say it, months or years of therapy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 100%. Well, it's massively helps me, and we help each other actually. James is like, do you need to step into mine's called Doom. So my safety officer, just sharing this, is called Doom. Like,
which tells you all you need to know about it.
What a nice name, Doom. Yeah, brilliant. So James is like, what's Doom up to right now? And I'm like, hang on a minute, let's go and have a chat with him. So we're going to have a chat with him, and it is beautiful. We both had the experience of doing this, and obviously you've given James so many tools that he's able to identify when Doom's on a rampage, which is quite frequently, and then help. So thank you for that, Rod. Thank you.
Well, it's fantastic, isn't it? Because actually you've hit on something else that's really important there, Claire, which is this isn't just limited to the presence of a therapist, coach, practitioner. This really is something that you can just do for yourself. And sometimes what emerges is just like, wow.
I think that's a really, really important point. This isn't just about the sessions themselves. It's about the practice that you take away. That you
For sure.
Every day.
Yeah.
And the sessions are amazing and do make a difference. But it's that consistency, I think, of doing the practice every day as well can really like move that change along so much faster.
Well, I think there are many therapies. I do think there are, and this is not to do down any therapies. I mean, I've had lots of different modalities, and I know James has as well, but having something practical, you know, from the way that we coach and take our clients through certain processes, it's very much about, look, here's a toolkit of things to take away, because we can have as much therapy as we want, but when the, excuse my language, shit hits the fan and you're like, okay, I don't know what to do here, I'm feeling really, really bad, but where's my therapist? I haven't got anything.
I'll tell you why that is, Claire. It's because I think I'm right in saying a heck of a lot of therapy focuses on the inner child, which is fabulous because, you know, that inner child needs attention and love. But when it's the therapist providing it rather than the person themselves, as soon as they walk out of the door, they're back to square one. There's nobody there to hold them. What's actually needed is their own sovereign or adult to come in. A female client summed it beautifully up for me ages ago. She said, "Oh, I really get it. This is exactly like when the children are in the house playing, they will only ever feel safe if they know there's a responsible adult somewhere in the house." And it really clicked for me, that image. It's like you build your king, you build your queen, and what happens is somehow the other parts of the system all calm down because they know there's something in somebody, another part of you in charge. It's like, and this may sound crazy to some of the people listening, but it's actually a reality. And if you think about it, you know, we're all in parts most of the time anyway, moving between them without even realizing it. You know, where's Mr. Grumpy today? I'm not claiming that one for myself. You have to speak to my wife about that. Okay, so before we go on, let's talk about the lover, which is the fourth archetype, feeling body, because this is all really, it's quite primal. It's the one that emerges first when a baby pops out of mum. It's all about connection. Now, people say, oh, lover, sex. Well, that's true because sex is a way to connect, but it's really about connection. It's about my connection with you, your connection with each other, everybody's connection with everyone else in their world. So the primal need of a baby is to be held, to be connected, to feel the presence of mum physically. So there's a lot of feeling body stuff around the lover archetype. And of course, that goes way back. You know, do you have a secure attachment? Do you have no attachment at all? God forbid. And quite a lot of kids don't. What's that going to do to you in the future? Well, it's going to do several things. It's going to leave you lacking in trust. It's going to leave you feeling insecure. It's probably going to leave you feeling not able to connect with other people and not being able to invest yourself in a loving relationship. And of course, the worse and earlier the damage, as in the deprivation, the more that will show up in later life. So there's a kind of real thing about, can we enter into relationship and can we stay in relationship when we're in there easily enough to get over the hard times and the difficulties? And the answer is yes, if you have a good base, good model of attachment in childhood. But beyond that, it's also about the beauty and sensuality and pleasure in, you know, art, music, fine wines, that kind of thing. Sensuous, or do I mean sensual? I never understand the difference of those two.
Both, I think both. Sensuous and sensual.
Yeah, those pleasures that are all about the softer part of existence.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have enough of it in childhood, it can go two ways in adulthood. You can be either, I don't need anybody, every man is an island, or it can go the opposite way. You know, I don't know if you've ever been around needy people who just constantly kind of somehow feel like they're constantly doing this to you.
Yeah. Energy vampires.
Yeah, absolutely. Amongst other things, the creepy ones always want to touch you. Sorry, that's very disrespectful, but there is truth in it.
There is truth in it. Yeah.
I've ever heard that.
And it's because they're so deprived of the sensation of connection that they just unconsciously are desperate for it.
Yeah.
So there are 4 archetypes, which all have their role to play in different aspects of life. And the truth is, every single one of them needs to be controlled by an adult sovereign. So if you develop, as I said a moment ago, with the metaphor of the house and the kids playing, if you developed your king or queen or adult heart-centered leader, then you automatically have a way to control the warrior, set a purpose and a mission, get sensible ideas off your magician stroke thinking creative part, and also regulate the way you display the need for affection and attention. But here's the catch. Most people don't have much of a sovereign because we're not brought up that way. So I'll give you one example. I worked with a client some years ago now, and I said to him, just close your eyes and imagine your sovereign, your king, and tell me what he's doing. And without hesitation, he said, he's on the floor, in the pub, under the table, drunk, asleep, surrounded by the plebs.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, quite. So he was running on Warrior. He was very successful. He was chief executive of a big charity. And it was quite enlightening to me that he was just being carried forward by determination and energy and doing.
But I think, and I imagine obviously some of our clients, well, I know a lot of our clients do listen to this podcast, but the conversations I've had coaching some of the lovely women that I've had the pleasure to coach is a lot of us women, and myself included, and these women, we do run off of that striving, and the softer side of ourselves, and I suppose that would be the feeling body, the lover, but also the creative side of ourselves, right? So we're on that warrior, so going, striving, but also with this massive fear that if they stop striving and they stop going, that something is going to fall apart, because that's their safety part, the safety officer going, oh, you can't stop because all these terrible things are going to happen. So
absolutely,
I know from myself and a lot of women that I work with and have spoken to, we find it's very alien to go into the sovereign, the queen that is connected from below and above and below, and that soul part of ourselves, but also that kind of feminine, creative, very trusting and letting go. Like we can't remember what it feels like to let go.
Yeah, I totally get that, Claire. And I think it's very sad. And on a positive note, this is where the daily practice comes in. That actually, right from the off, you're not being sent out of the therapist's door until next week and being left basically on your own, unless the therapist's doing a decent job of putting an adult in your head. The daily practices, particularly stepping into your king or queen, are the one that really will bring about change. And then the other practice of just talking to the different parts of yourself and actually, switching between them to make this a live dialogue. They are, well, as you've alluded to, James, revelatory, transformational, and it's quite literally true. But it all has to be driven by good intentions, clear intentions, and a certain amount of warrior determination.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think maybe it'd be useful if you did that exercise to help people step into their sovereign.
I certainly will, with pleasure. Yeah. Can I do the plug of the book?
Absolutely.
Oh my
Or
goodness.
do you want to do that exercise and then we'll do like plug of the book and how they can find out more and work with you right at the end. So
right, thank you.
We'll put in the show notes, absolutely. So
fantastic.
I've read Rod's book and it's a brilliant book about archetypes and shadow work.
Thank you. And I'm not just plugging it for the sake of making money, although that's very welcome. I'm plugging it because it really can be a route to transformation for people who are stuck. I've spent the last 24 years working for this end, to help people take responsibility and change the shape and course of their lives, just as I did. So I know the reality from the ground upwards, and my desire is that, you know, even one person who changes in this direction will change their world. It's not just about changing me or you, it's about how that ripples out into everything. Okay.
Yeah. And I think it's such an important time as well, because I do think we're living in an epidemic of devolved responsibility.
Totally.
See it exponentially growing, you know, and it seems to be driven by quite large forces in the world. It's
driven by magician energy. You know, all the conspiracy theorists, all the deluded individuals, and probably mostly male, I think, because that does seem to be a male trait, who sit at home delving into the further reaches of the internet, are almost being sucked into a kind of dark magician energy, you know, kind of negative. To the magician, that's irrelevant. It's just fascinating. It's interesting. It's the lifeblood, actually, of the magician energy is intellectual curiosity. Whether it's right or wrong, or moral or immoral, or good or bad, is just not even in the magician's perspective. You know, Robert Oppenheimer, I believe, when the 2 atomic bombs went off in Japan, had a moment of realization of what he had actually done in designing the atomic bomb. But up to that point, it was just a project, just a challenge. Can we do it? Yes, we can. Oh, shit, what have I done? And that's what's lacking without a sovereign around a magician. You know, it can become very dark and very self-centered.
I think that's quite right. It's, you know, this also, like, I don't know, this whole keyboard, I know you were saying about warriors here, but keyboard warriors, and kind of sitting behind screens and not connecting with people, and not taking responsibility. And there's you know, there is a real kind of like victim mentality of everything's being done to me, and I'm just like, I can't do anything about it.
And you see the
whole other conversation, but
well, totally. But you see the common factor, Claire, is the absence of any queen, sovereign adult, grown-up part of them. Yes. Anyway,
let's do it.
So let's do the exercise. So you two could join in if you wanted to, or
absolutely will.
Okay, great stuff. So I will just close my eyes too, so I can just focus internally on the words. So what I'd like you to do is just stand up and find a little space with a clear area around you, because in a moment you're going to be taking a small step. And just first of all, feel your feet on the floor and just quickly scan through your body just to come back into contact with it. Just shake your hands, perhaps. Just rub your chest, your belly maybe. Just feel your thighs and your lower legs, just to reconnect with your body. We've been having this intellectual discussion, and now it's time to move from head downwards into heart. And you could just take a few deep breaths, and on the out breath, just feel the connection with your body. Just use the out breath as a way of reminding yourself that you're not just a mind thinking away. You've got a body supporting you in all the ways that it supports you and your life. And just another couple of deep breaths. And now I'd like you to keep your eyes closed and imagine that somewhere very close to you is an image of your perfect, fully formed queen or king, heart-centered leader in all their glory, the most magnificent version of yourself. And in your imagination, take a look at that. Take a look at that part of yourself. Whatever you see as the right thing for now, maybe a fully formed, glorious, shining king or queen or heart-centered leader, or it may be something different. But whatever it is a representation of that energy, that archetype within you right now. So take a look at that and consider what qualities that archetype embodies. For example, integrity, authenticity, honesty, generosity, kindness, compassion, determination, whatever qualities your queen or king embodies. Just imagine, think about them, see what you sense in that person that you're looking at right now. Now, some of you may have an image that doesn't represent what you think of as a king or queen. And if that's the case, then I'm going to leave the choice to you as to whether you step into that or not. But if you feel comfortable, in a moment, I'm going to invite you to take a step into the space where you imagine that aspect of yourself, that archetypal energy, is located. So have another look at them. Look at the qualities. Consider the character and attributes of the person that you're looking at in your imagination. And if you feel comfortable, take a step into that space and allow the energy of that archetype to flow right through you. And as you do that, you'll probably find something changes or appears to change physically, emotionally, perhaps even spiritually. Maybe you feel bigger, taller. Maybe you just feel energy flowing around your body in a different way. Or maybe you have a mental thing like greater clarity. There's no way of knowing what it will be. And I suspect that most of you will be feeling some kind of change. But if you're not, just repeat that process. Imagine again that sovereign, heart-centered leader and just make them shine even more brightly with the qualities that you believe they embody. And then, if you want to, with the intention to step into those energies, take that step again and see what happens this time. So this is the ease of access to an archetype within you. It's something that you can do every day. And to come from this place, you will embody more of the qualities that you identified in that part of yourself a few moments ago. And now, because of our limitation on time, there's no need, when you step back and sit down again, perhaps, there's no need to leave those energies behind. Take them with you. And when you're ready, just come back and we'll rejoin the call. So I'm wondering if, James, Claire, you would like to tell us what happened, if anything, when you did that.
Absolutely, you go first, darling.
Well, this is something I've been practicing for a while, but it's always a pleasant surprise when it's so powerful. Like, you know, I feel bigger. I feel those qualities flowing through me. I felt actually a sense of calmness. I think today's been quite busy. There's probably been quite a lot of warrior energy.
Yeah.
But I felt the kind of calmness of the king taking control and just calming everything down. So yeah.
Fabulous. Thank you, James. Claire?
So interestingly, I saw a completely different version of my queen, of my sovereign. So it's not what I normally see. And I think it's just talking to you and saying it out loud about the soul version. So this was just actually like an outline of something, like the soul part of me, which was very large and very luminous with a big aura and golden. And I stepped into that.
Fantastic.
And that made me feel deeply, deeply connected, very calm, very sure, very sure, like of source energy that is within me and around me.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
Thank you
So
very,
thank
very
you.
much.
It's an
thank you
absolute
so
pleasure to speak with you both. Really is.
It really
Well,
is.
it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time on this. Now let's tell people, like,
About the
first of all,
book.
let's tell them about your book, or how indeed they can maybe contact you or just find out more about shadow work if they're interested.
Perfect. So I'll just reach for a copy of it, if that's okay. Excuse me one moment.
Listeners, we will put all this in the show notes as well for you.
Absolutely.
So you find all this in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So here we are. This is the book.
Mm-hmm.
Warrior, Magician, Lover, King. A Guide to the Male Archetypes. Well, I think in retrospect, I would probably have written it for both genders, but it is absolutely applicable to both genders. So don't be scared off by that. The archetypes are the same within us. They just have a slightly different way of expressing themselves. And it's available on Amazon. I took the decision to self-publish, which has proved much easier than trying to go through the rigmarole of agents and publishers. All the contact details you might want are in the back of the book, actually, James. So anybody who's interested in taking it further will find organisations and practitioners, both in this country and if your clients are also overseas. So hopefully there shouldn't be any difficulty finding somebody that they can talk to.
Brilliant.
And as I say, it's available on Amazon.
It's Warrior, Magician, Lover, King.
Yes, the title is derived from a much earlier book by Moore and Gillette, Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette, who called it King, Warrior, Magician, Lover. So I do have their permission to abstract their title.
Amazon link in the show notes.
Amazon link, and we'll put links to any other stuff that I find that will help you find Rod a little bit easier. So we've just absolutely
been a great session. Thank you.
This call,
and I'm sure our listeners are going to.
Oh my goodness! You know, they're used to us doing all sorts of different episodes, aren't they? But this one has to go up there with my favourite because we love this stuff, and it's so deeply important, and it's hugely helped James. It's hugely helped me, and it's just a real pleasure to meet you. So anyone that doesn't know, I've not actually met Rod before, so this is the first time I'm meeting him. So it's been a real pleasure. Thank you.
It's an absolute joy to spread the word, to see you both. Hope to see you again, and wish you all the best possible for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Midlife Mentors with Claire and James Davis.
We'd love to hear from you, so drop us a line at info@themidlifementors.com with any questions or topic suggestions.
And make sure you join us on our Facebook page and YouTube channel. You can find us under the Midlife Mentors.
Yeah. What? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.